And I kind of want to start in the country. I want to talk about MLS and what it means for the league itself to have players like this come back, to try and bring players like this come back, good, bad, and different. I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I think it's obvious. Clearly, FC Cincinnati and the league are out to destroy not only the USL, but also now the USMNT. And that has to be their sole goal because why else would they be making bids to absolutely destroy players' careers and bring them over here so that the USMNT can fail? Like that's got to be the only reason they're doing this. Like they can't possibly be trying to improve the value of their team, improve the quality, bring some more excitement to the league and to the team. They can't possibly be doing that. I can't wrap my head around a realm where that's the situation where they're trying to bring him in. I don't know what you think, but it just seems ludicrous to me.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about all that towards the end when we're comparing the two. Um, but listen, like we've been asking MLS to make these big in their prime signings to really push us into MLS 4.0, right? We've talked about it a little bit where we're like, oh, we're kind of creeping into that where we're getting more players in their prime wanting to come here. We got the money to spend, but we haven't really taken that big jump. This is the sort of signing I think takes us to that level, right? He's one of the best players in the national team. He's been very good for teams in Italy and England, no matter what the silly online people say about him in general. He is a constant workhorse. He does a lot of the really good, in the trenches type of stuff. He's a competitor and he's a fighter and he does really, really well. Um, I'm, I think if he were to go to FCC, they make him instantly one of the best teams in the league. And linking him up with Lucia Costa is going to be
Oh my God.
terrifying, right? Terrifyingly fun. I mean, Lucia Costa on his own is carrying this team. Now you've got Obina Nobota behind him, and you can throw a Weston McKinney in there and, flex him too, because you've got a couple players, because you just brought in Pavel Bukcha as well, who is kind of filling that role. So maybe Lucci's going to go float out wide and then come inside. There's so many different things you can then do with this. It's very, very interesting to see.
It's that's the only thing confusing to me is like I don't know how they fit Weston into the team. Like I would think they'd have to do a formation change, which maybe they would do. I
Mm-hmm.
could definitely see them when everybody's well, I guess it probably would be a while before they maybe do this now, but originally I was thinking, oh, they could go four at the back with Robinson and Miazga as a two center back formation. Obviously, those two would be really, really good partnership, probably one of the best in the league. But now, obviously, Miazga is out for a while. And I figured the change from three center backs to two would free up the spot in the midfield where McKennie could come in. But with Miazga out for so long, I don't know if they would go to that necessarily. I feel like they'd more likely stick with the three at the back, go with some combination of like Haglin, Robinson, whatever combination they want to go with back
Ian
there.
Murphy is the last one you're looking for, and I'll,
Okay,
and I'll
I'm glad I
stop
didn't
you.
say anything because Ian Frey was on my mind.
Ian Frey from Miami, nice.
Yeah, I
Um,
got the Ians mixed up.
I do have to let you know that Nick Hagland just broke his leg last night, so I don't think you'll be seeing
Oh,
much of him. But to your point, right?
Kim
That
Keller time. That's what that means.
oh,
Don't
hooked
talk
into my
about him though, please.
veins.
No,
Um,
stop. You're gonna ruin his career again.
again, he can't do it twice. Um, no, so I think to your point, right? Like there might be a formation just based off of necessity. There might be a formation change to fix this sort of issue, right? You're looking at, you'd have to bring Orlano back into the left back spot properly, not a wing back where he's been very, very good. It'd be a negative in that sense, but you're getting an extra body in the midfield to control it. You've got now two players up top with Kelsey and who played up there last night is a young
Is it Kubo?
Kubo can play up
No,
there too. Yeah,
that might have
Kubo
been
can play up there
Spain.
too.
Yeah.
You could put Lucci up there and have him drop off in a false night. There's tons of things you can do. Um, but outside of FCC in general, I think that, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I think this is going to be a signal for yet another push in the right direction for the clubs in this league to be more ambitious with their spending, right? If you think about every era, right, we're in MLS 4.0, 3.0, 2.0, right? It all started with one team being more ambitious than the rest, right? The designated player started with LA Galaxy and Beckham and was followed by Red Bull and Henri, Fire and Blanco. And now you're at a spot where these players are the norm. these are the players that you're trying to bring in, unless you're Montreal, I guess. And then you had MLS 3.0, where you've got Atlanta United who's saying, we don't want to do the whole designated player retirement thing. We're going to go find South Americans and push into that market and see if we can convince them to come here. And boom, now it's everybody's hottest scouting area, regardless of if they're having success or not. That's where everybody starts looking. Now maybe we're looking at a St. Louis who are saying, okay, I'm going to move away from that and go into younger, more established players from Europe again. Not the older ones, but the younger ones. Maybe we see a shift towards them, right? None of that happens if we don't have teams who are saying, I'm not just going to follow the mold. I'm going to do something like this, right? And we saw it with Toronto back in a little bit, but this is, I think, levels to it. And again, and there's another one where you're like, oh, maybe you want to just be an academy setup, right? And we want to build from the academy. All teams are now trying to take another step forward with their academy and develop instead of buy, right? Aiden Morris just played his last game in Columbus, one of the best homegrown products probably ever. You could probably make that argument for it. But none of that happens and I don't know who the first, official academy setup was, but none of this happens if you don't have one person who's like, I'm going to try and change the mold and make something different. So even if McKinney doesn't get over the line, I think it's a sign that's saying people are now ready to be. It's kind of like follow the leader, right? Like, I won't do it until this person does it. And I won't do it until this person does it. And then you're looking for whoever the first follower is. Somebody's going to break that mold. And then the first person's going to go and follow them. And then the next person's going to follow them. And now we've all taken the step forward, right? Minus one or two teams that are always going to be held back until big changes are made.
I think people are forgetting the fact that West hasn't signed anything. He's not going to FCC. Like, there's nothing that says that he's going to FCC right now. He just took a meeting with them, and people are losing their minds over it as if he signed the dotted line while, like, it's like they act like he left in the middle of a Copa America game to go to FCC and sign on the dotted line that he's going to play in MLS for the rest of his career. It's absolutely insane, the level of leaping that people are taking right now. But the thing that's very frustrating to me is people love to complain all the time about how bad MLS is. It's not even like they're like, oh, they're so far from a top 10 league. The quality is garbage. So then MLS goes out and tries to bring in top quality players. And then everybody is up in arms like, oh, how dare you? Sorry, you're not allowed to bring in those players. You have to go find hidden gems around the world. You're not allowed to bring in talented players who are from the US. It's just ridiculous. Not to mention that MLS played a hand in making Weston or helping boost Weston McKinney's career. He started out here. Like, why is it so ridiculous that, oh, Weston wants to come closer to home where his friends and family are and play there? Because in the designated player spot, you can make good money in the US now. This isn't 20 years ago where you made like nickels and dimes compared to the rest of the world. Like, you make good money and you could be much closer to home. I think it's not out of the realm of like ridiculousness that people would want to do that. Plus, like, the league quality is so much better. I mean, the fact that the greatest player of all time decided he wanted to come play in this league, I feel like is a testament to the fact that the league is improving and it's got quality now. I'm still not saying it's a top 10 league in the world. I think there's still progress to be done before you could say that. But it certainly has been improving like at a very, very fast pace over the recent years. And I feel like they've been doing a lot of things right. I know they've been doing plenty of things wrong lately, and we've talked about that a number of times. But in the general movement and progression of the league, I think they've been doing a lot of good things. And this is another thing to add on top of that they've been doing well, is this level of ambition.
You really, really just want to get to the end section of this. Everything you said I had planned to put at the bottom of this episode, and you're just like, I can't hold it in anymore. Boom.
Sorry, we could rehash it at the end.
You're like the podcast Karen. You just can't help yourself. You just gotta yell at whoever you need to yell at. But it's good because I agree with a lot of your points, and we'll cover that later. Kind of just to bring us back on topic here. I think these are the signings that these clubs need to start making to take us to that next level. And people forget that this isn't an impossible thing to do, right? Designated players don't have a salary limit. If you have the right pitch and timing on their contracts, any of these guys can make their move. And I understand that some clubs want to go for older guys that are going to sell shirts, jerseys, merch, whatever. Some are really going to try and get the unknown players to sell on for profit later. That's cool too. But I think if we do really want to cement ourselves as a top 10 league, like you were just mentioning, or as Don Garber puts it, a destination site for top players, it needs to start with these types of signings. International caliber players in their prime, still contributing at a high level, that need to come to the league, right? That's how you take the step into top 10. And, as you mentioned, there are a lot of people online who have disdain over something like this, and the argument of top 10 versus top 50. And you get the people who come out and say it's not even better than the Italian third division, and obviously they don't know what they're talking about. But the people who are sitting there saying it's not a top 10 league have good points, right? Top 10 leagues all are places that other people want to go to in their prime, not as a oh, I'll think about going there later type of thing. So how do we get there is you start bringing those people and you raise the level of the team and the league and the teams in the league, and it gets more and more appealing, I think is the word I want to use there. And from that, and this will be my last point before we move on, building off of that, right, where you're building up these teams and leagues, and the ceiling is getting higher and more competitive. I think it then improves the league top to bottom in terms of the academy system, right? Right now, we're seeing a lot of players signed to these homegrown contracts, and they're either tossed onto a first team bench or they're sitting in MLS Next Pro. Maybe they're going out to USL championship loans. And it feels like the development is good for some, great for others, terrible for some, because the quality in those lower leagues are very, very different. So, thinking long term, right? If you start signing players like McKinney and players of that caliber to your first team, well, now your first or second sub off the bench isn't going to be, academy kid number 3 who you're bringing up because there is no more depth. It's going to be your TAM player that is contributing at a decently high level, that is then going to push the homegrown guy back closer to his level where he can compete. And you do more of that, and now that bottom pool is getting a bit stronger as well, just by association, right? And if MLS Next Pro becomes more talented and more competitive, it's good for player development. And again, we're about to get into the USMNT side of this. If you want the U.S. men's national team to be full of players that play in the United States, or because they have to, you need a strong development program. And if the development program isn't as strong as it could be, you're not going to have a strong national team. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, I don't think that this is like the end all be all greatest part of this move, right? I think this is, small chips in a bag. But I think it also is something to consider for long term. I think that it has a bigger impact than just FCC in 2025.
Yeah, I think that the one thing I wanted to say before we went on to the USMNT side of this is the notion that MLS is going out there to try to kill the USMNT, and this move is just a way to, constantly MLS is like ruining things for the USMNT is just so ridiculous. Because if you look at the Copa America squad that's there, majority of this team has had some time spent in MLS or MLS adjacent clubs. So like Sean Johnson, Matt Turner, Mark McKenzie, Shaq Moore, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson, Joe Scally, Tyler Adams, Weston McKinney, Gio Reyna, Brendan Aronson, Ricardo Pepi, Tim Weah, and Haji Wright all have spent time at some point with an MLS club. Doesn't mean that they were necessarily in the first team. Some of them spent only time with a youth team. But if you just got rid of MLS, right? Like if we just took it out of the picture, you are not looking at the same USMNT team. You're looking at a worse team, 100%. A number of these guys are not going to hit their level without them getting some support from MLS, whether it's them discovering them, helping to train them. And I'm not saying that them jumping over to Europe hasn't helped their career. It definitely has, way more than they could if they just stayed in MLS. But the notion that MLS is hurting the USMNT and we should just get rid of MLS's impact on helping create USMNT players is just so ridiculous and just dumb. It's just flat out dumb. And you're just looking at your your Jackson Yules, your Sebastian Leggets, and you're saying this is the level of quality that MLS can make, and just completely glossing over the fact that they've had a hand in helping almost a majority of the USMNT like roster in helping shape their career.
A fair point, a point that probably fit in the last section better than here. Again,
I only want to talk about the third bullet point. Like,
I know, I could tell. I prepped you for this, and you're like, nope, I'm only talking about one thing. But you're right. To tie it back in, you're right. And when we talk about development and pathways, if we aren't keeping that at a high level, then our development drops, our development stagnates, and then you're relying on dual nationals, you're relying on kids who are the highest of a not so good group making some big jump over and then hopefully sticking in a country they're not familiar with at 17 years old, right? It's a bigger gamble. So having MLS to be more successful helps in the long term with the national team, which we'll talk about later. So
all right,
let's move.
yeah, we should move on because otherwise I'm just gonna keep talking about the third
You're
bullet
just gonna keep.
point.
We're gonna get there eventually. You sit there and you put your hands down and you're gonna say, "Wait for your turn." We'll get there.
Okay, I'll be patient.
All right. So let's then move to the national team and flip mindset. Right. Not anything about MLS. I'm trying to clear your mind here. No MLS impact. No crossover. Just the men's national team. What does this mean for the national team? Are we instantly going to be worse? Are we going to gradually get worse? Are we going to get better? What would and let's not say just a McKinney move. Let's say it becomes a general trend of maybe not the top of the top, but the certain players maybe on the bubble coming up.
I would say I think people will 100% overblow how much of an impact it will have on the players and the team if it did become a trend. I would say the most important thing is for them to be in Europe to develop while they're developing when they're in that key range of like 20 to 25. I think could be really crucial for them to learn and kind of like learn in the European system. I think if they came over somewhere between like 26 and 30, I really don't think it's the end of the world. Like I understand that like it would be better, obviously, if they were in Europe getting game time with a tougher competition. I think it would still be better for their development. I just think at that point, there's only so much more that you're going to probably develop before you kind of hit your peak. And like, this is the best that I'm going to be able to be. And so I think if they came to MLS in that time, I really don't think it's going to completely shatter the USMNT. Like it's not going to turn the team into like a disaster. We're not going to like fall into like the fourth best team in the region. Like the team will still be fine. They will still be very talented. You could almost make the argument that it'd be good that they're playing in the same league. You can build chemistry from the club level as well, learn how to play with one another. So I think like I don't think it's like the best move. I don't think it's how you're going to maximize your potential with the USMNT, but I also don't think it's the end of the world. The team's going to be ruined if people start coming over to MLS. Because even if some of the bigger guys do, like if Pooley comes over at some point and West comes over and I don't know, Chris Richards comes back, there's still going to be tons of people in Europe. So if the European way is that much better, then there's going to be new guys stepping up to take over those roles if the level of play drops that much from them coming over to MLS. So I think it will be fine. No matter what, it will be fine. The USMNT is not going to fall off a cliff if guys start coming over to MLS. The bigger problem is at the head coach spot. That's the bigger problem, not where the players are necessarily playing.
Yeah, it's fair.